So,
So,
today we are talking about...
sorry.
Today we're talking about one of Julia Armfield's essays, The Ocean is a Lesbian, Notes on Queer Women and Water. I love the tagline.
What is the tagline? I can't remember now.
What is it with these lesbians and why are they all so wet?
Oh, yes. I think it ended up getting into outtakes rather than the episode proper. But we do have a discussion in our Lake Law episode about several wet lesbians. So I might just put that into this episode here.
Water is queer, as we established in the last episode.
Oh,
Water is queer.
Isn't there an essay about that? Was that what you were talking about the last episode?
The author of Our Wives Under the Sea, Julia Armfield, wrote
it was hers.
an essay on called Queer Water, which was about how lesbians are wet. That was kind of the way it was phrased.
Yeah, they are though. Cut to Gideon and Harrow making out in a pool.
You know, did they make out?
I don't think they did.
Still up for debate.
In my
Still
heart,
up
they
for
did.
debate.
Again, we established, I think, that they don't canonically necessarily.
No, in your
They
heart,
will one day.
they made out, and in Zoe's heart,
He went a little bit
fully
further.
banged.
Amazing.
But basically, we were talking about the fact that Gideon and Harrow were wed.
They are.
Yeah.
It's very important. They can't be true to each other unless they're wet.
Wetness is symbolic of vulnerability.
Yes.
Because you're never wet. This is going to sound really terrible.
Continue, Soren.
I think you should listen to this one with headphones on. Just going to preface this episode with that, and then I'll continue. You're never wet when you're in control. Do you know what I mean? If you're wet, you've like fallen into a river or something. As humans, we're not really supposed to be wet.
Uh-huh.
I feel like when you're wet, you're less put together.
Yeah.
Particularly at the Harrow Gideon scene, because their face paint washes off.
Yes.
So the barriers are down. You know, your masks are down. You can't be immersed in water and also have walls up. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're wet.
The membrane of the physical world is thinner than usual.
Mm-hmm. Liminal space, which I think Armfield touches on a little bit
Exactly. Yeah.
with her sea lung.
We should say that this is an essay in relation to her book, Our Wives Under the Sea, which we have also done an episode on.
Yes. I was really surprised by how many properties she named.
Yeah, have I consumed a single one of them? No. But I know a lot about some of them.
Because she mentioned the gloaming, and I was already thinking about the gloaming when I started reading it. And then she mentioned a couple more, but I was like thinking about more when I was reading it. Like I read Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens recently, which arguably both the protagonists are bi in that because they have relationships with men as well. But there's definitely this component to the ocean and swimming and freedom that I was like, there's a through line here, even though in that context it's actually mostly the protagonist's male lover who he spends time with in the ocean. It still feels very symbolic of her connecting to her own sexuality, etc. Did I just hear the seagulls? I feel like I haven't heard the seagulls in ages, and they're doing it while we're doing The Ocean is Lesbian. They're here.
Yes.
Wow.
I live by the ocean, an hour away, everybody.
I feel like since you moved within the town that you're in, we've had less problems with seagull sounds. A couple of our very early episodes have some seagull sounds, which I'm now better at cutting out, but I apologise. But we don't get as many anymore to begin with, so I'm surprised that they've made an appearance. I hope they picked up on the mic.
It's weird though, because last year when the seagull sounds were happening, I was living in a basement flat.
Yeah.
And this year, when they're not happening as much, I live in a roof flat. So wild. But also it's summer, so we're going to get a lot more seagulls now.
Maybe they're underground seagulls. They live in tunnels.
There were seagulls in the floorboards.
We're getting sidetracked from lesbians, though.
Lesbians. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Go for it.
Korra, the avatar from Legend of Korra.
Yes.
Water-based powers, first and foremost. Also, a queer woman. I haven't finished it, but I know that happens. Also, the homoerotic vibes of H2O Just Add Water. It's all about transformation and about being vulnerable in your true self. They change every time they touch water, literally.
Isn't there something quite inherently queer about mermaids in general?
Oh, definitely.
Because often there aren't mermen, or mermen aren't depicted alongside them, which has some implications, really, even if they're drowning sailors.
Why are they drowning the sailors? Do you not like men? I see you.
Everyone always jokes about the ace pirate who doesn't get affected by the mermaids, but what if you're an ace mermaid, so you just drown everybody? I feel like that's the other side.
This is me. This is my new villain origin story. I'm just like, f*** you all, actually.
Also, speaking of stories written by lesbians about lesbians with oceanic elements, the Tranthologies episode, Many Benefits, by our good friend Zoe Davis, who was on the pod.
Yes.
I was thinking about that when I was reading this essay. I just wanted to shout it out. If you're looking for a cute meet cute, you should go listen to that episode.
Yes. Actually, I just finished reading Lies We Sing to the Sea by Sarah Underwood, who is a lovely author. Amazing book. It devastated me. I had to send a photo to everyone I was reading it with just tears down my face, which, you know, we love. But that is about two sapphic women who die. That's not a spoiler. It happens in like the first 5 pages. And they both get resurrected with ocean powers from Poseidon.
Ooh.
And they have these little cute scenes where they're like making birds with their water powers and like throwing water at each other. And they live by the sea for a whole year. And then they have to go off and murder a prince together. And it's great. That is inherently very queer. They also, the first time they have sex is on a beach. So
there you go.
And then Poseidon's just there being but he facilitates the queerness. So we'll give him a small pass. Just a small one.
To be fair, Poseidon also has that one story where he kind of has a trans mask partner, but also it's a little bit dubious.
Isn't that the one where Poseidon literally rapes someone and then is like, what do you want so this can never happen again?
Well, he's just like, what do you want generally? And then I would love to see a more positive retelling of that. I feel like there's a possibility. I know that can be a touchy subject because people are like, oh, don't change, for example, the Hades Persephone story. But I think it's valid to be like, this is a reimagining of it. If it was a real thing that happened, then no, but it's mythology, so I think it's okay to twist it.
Yes, this is the thing. I'll go on a little dissertation rant. But retellings tell you more about the society retelling them than about the society they're trying to tell. All these people who get angry about how it's not historically accurate and how that's not what the original myth was talking about. It speaks to our society. And what we choose to take in and retell shows the values that we're putting. And these myths inherently have already been retold so many times. All the stuff we know about Achilles with Achilles' heel, for example, that doesn't show up in literature until the 1st century. Whereas the original story that we have written down, at least, is the Iliad, which was written in like the 8th to 7th century BC. So it's all just added in. And then you have Euripides and Sophocles adding in random stuff in the 5th century BC. There's no text, there's no canon text. There's like 100 different stories and they're all true simultaneously. So actually retelling is just adding another story to the canon. They are all canon, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Retellings. Retell whatever the you want.
Yeah, and I think people get very excited about the text. This is the one. And it's like, that's the one that survived, probably just due to luck. If you look at Grimm's fairy tales as well, they had that whole, we need to preserve all of the fairy tales. It's going to be so important because they're all changing. And we want the peasant class's fairy tales as they told them. And then they went and only asked upper class people to retell them and didn't talk to anyone else anyway. So they were definitely getting a different version of those stories.
Yeah. And most of, especially the mythology texts that we have, are the ones that monks were copying down.
Yeah.
So they were picking the ones they thought were morally correct and throwing away the other ones they didn't like.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the fragments we have are from a massive rubbish heap in Egypt called Oxyrhynchus. So the only reason they survived is because they got thrown away. So that doesn't show anything about how popular they were.
Exactly.
Makes me angry. As anyone can tell, my dissertation is due in 5 days when we're recording this, so I've been having a lot of thoughts about retellings, specifically with Achilles.
Yes.
I started writing a transmask Achilles retelling, which starts with him trying to drown himself in the water because he wants to turn into a nymph. Yes.
Ooh.
Nymphs also.
Yeah.
Mermaids, sirens.
Selkies feel very gay to me. Again, I think it's that thing of you don't really hear about male Selkies in mythology, which implies this all-female society, which just feels inherently sapphic. You could also argue that it's an inherently asexual thing, the Hunters of Artemis kind of thing. I feel like it's both of those things.
Yes. The inherent queerness of transitioning from in sea to on land.
I did find it interesting how she was talking about how it's been written about how water has been connected to male queerness as well, in terms of like cruising spots. I was reading A Trans Man Walks into a Gay Bar by Harry Nicholas, and he has a whole chapter on wild swimming and water in gay art. Henry Scott Tuke, who does all of those paintings of young men lounging about on the beach, usually naked. There's that very famous one that I always see circulating of two sitting very close together. That's taken the internet by storm a few times. He was not ever confirmed gay, but very repetitive subject matter. So it's nice to see it from this perspective. Because Harry Nicholas's point was swimming being historically an acceptable time for you to be naked together and to look at each other and to engage with each other in that way, even if it's not in a sexual way, without facing any consequences. And I think that that's going to be equally true for women as well as men. And also it came up in, I read Parallel recently by Matthias Lemon, which was translated into English recently. And there's this situation where the protagonist of that is living with his current wife and his lover as a boarder in the house. So they keep sneaking away to go for midnight swims together, which obviously evolves into more. But it was just an interesting parallel. Haha.
Can't believe we haven't spoken about A Restless Truth yet.
Oh my god, yeah.
Queer women on the water.
And there's another sapphic cruise ship book.
1,000,000 to 1.
1,000,000 to 1, yes. Which neither of us have read, I believe, but
It's on the list, and I've heard very good things.
I think that's another element of it being a liminal space, because you're in international waters, if you see what I mean. You're not really beholden to any particular laws, and you're presumably away from your environment and your friends and your family, and you're with all these new people. It's just a space where queer things can happen.
Yes, you're trapped together.
Close proximity.
How do we survive?
On this very nice cruise ship in both of these situations.
How do we survive the boredom of upper-class life? Also, The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea by Mikey Takuda Hall. Ostensibly sapphic, but also non-binary. Again, they're trapped on the ship together. The vibes are happening. Someone turns into a mermaid at one point. It's great. The sea is a lesbian in that one, definitely.
I feel like that ties a little bit into that international waters thing. Obviously, historically, there have been women pirates who are using that role to eschew gender roles and often make out with other women.
As you do.
I haven't read Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea. The captain's gender fluid, right?
Yes. It's very similar magic to Sister Song. If you tell the story and it becomes who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was assuming this would happen before we talked about it, that we would sort of meander into men and then also gender fluidity and non-binary characters and stuff. I've definitely heard a lot of the sort of the moon is a lesbian, the ocean is a lesbian, and I'm like, I'm so down. You can claim the ocean and the moon. That's very valid of you guys. But I do sometimes find that it almost edges into that sort of mystic feminism kind of stuff, where nature is viewed as inherently feminine, which I think can be unfortunate because it does that thing where it implies that masculinity is sort of more rational and logical by comparison, and femininity is more empathetic.
Yeah.
I don't see a boundary between those two things, or I don't think that there should be one. I'm kind of straying into like, it's all just queer. And I think also because water itself is just transience and fluidity, literally.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it. I think we can put pictures in the description because it's Patreon, isn't that exciting? But there's that random piece of art in my kitchen, a lino print of the hand on the rainbow background trailing through water.
It sounds familiar.
I found it because I was looking for art that was explicitly queer, and this piece is called Elusive. It's by Petra Zimmerman. I just found it on Etsy, but the description, which unfortunately I can't access now because all of the prints have been sold, so it's not listed anymore. Soren from the future here. I actually messaged Petra, who very kindly sent me the text, which said, I came up with this design in the process of trying to articulate my grasp on queerness and gender identity, exploring my complex set of thoughts and feelings, RE being non-binary. And also, just so you know, Petra's portfolio will be linked in the description if you want to check out their work. I think you see that a lot in queer visual art as well as in literature.
It's nice to see different communities within queerness claim different bits for themselves at the end of the day. It's an ocean. Not exactly a queer book, but In the Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, which is in my brain because of my dissertation. There's this moment where Briseis says that she goes down to the water all the time because it feels like a liminal space, and it's where she can communicate with her dead brothers. And so that's where she goes to sort of feel that. And then you have the parallel of Achilles always being in the water and always wanting to almost drown himself, that liminal space of like half god, half human.
Yeah.
And in Pat Barker's novel, Achilles is very asexual coded in his hatred of touch and bodily function and stuff like that. So, another kind of queer vibe.
Yeah.
I will defend asexual Achilles as my take for that book to my death, but I'm the only person who has read it that way. But also, it's kind of definitely true.
Once again, sound off in the comments if you've read The Silence of the Girls and you think Achilles is asexual coded.
It's weird, though, because a lot of retelling authors are like, he's asexual or he's gay. No one's out here with bisexual Achilles, which is annoying.
It seems a bit bizarre, given that, at least in a lot of his earlier characterizations, he does seem very interested in female sexuality.
The whole conflict of the Iliad is he loves Patroclus and he loves Briseis.
Yeah.
And yet nobody seems to be able to allow him to have both of those loves.
Yeah. I also, with him having a cult of the water in that also feels, and I've also got your diss on my brain because I've been reading bits of it and talking to you about it, that in terms of masculinity and femininity, obviously Achilles' mother is very associated with water. So it seems interesting if he's having that sort of pull towards the water? Is it also a pull away from masculinity towards femininity? And particularly, he was on an island where he was cross-dressing.
Exactly. His masculinity has this sort of constant shift and transformation as he mirrors the other people that he is around. So originally when he is in fire, he idolizes heroism and heroes because he's been told all these stories by Chiron and by his father Peleus about Heracles and stuff like that. And then he meets Patroclus, and at least in the Song of Achilles, he becomes a lot sort of softer and parallels Patroclus. And then as soon as they get to the war, he becomes violent, because that is the culture of masculinity that he has been dropped into, and he's trying to mirror and fit because he feels like he doesn't fit, because he has that half mortal, half divine thing, wanting to be both and ending up neither. So he tries to conform, which is inherently queer.
That's an interesting point, the reflection aspect of water. Historically, not everyone's going to have access to mirrors. It's one of the only times that you're seeing yourself, which is interesting both from a trans point of view and, like, it's an important part of attraction, knowing what you look like and are people attracted to me, that kind of thing. So it feels, I don't feel like I'm phrasing this very well, but...
No, I know exactly what you mean. There's a whole moment in The Silence of the Girls where he covers up all the mirrors after Patroclus dies, and he stops going into the water because there's no point in seeing himself anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Jumping to a completely different thing.
Jump.
I've got 2 different jumps. I can't decide which jump to do first. Which jump should I do first, Lauren? A or B?
B.
B. Okay. This is the least queer of the 2 options.
Damn, I chose wrong.
The Rivers of London series by Ben Aronovich. It doesn't seem inherently queer on the surface because it is just all of these rivers are women. Have fun with that. But also, like, that's inherently kind of queer. But as you go through more of the series, you find out that all of these rivers used to be men. Mother Thames was originally Father Thames, but then I think it's a refugee nurse from Nigeria jumps into the Thames to try and end her life and becomes the Thames instead.
Yeah.
From then on, all of the rivers on the north side or the south side of the rivers start shifting towards a more feminine aspect, and they sort of present feminine instead. And you get a whole flashback in book 7 where the main character, who is dating one of the rivers, Beverly, meets like guy version of Beverly and is like, okay, anyway. And then Beverly just continues to be a woman in all of their modern interactions, but is a man in all of their vision quest past interactions, which is such a fun little queer vibe.
Yeah, you mentioning the rivers made me think of Godkiller, the river god who Kissin seeks help from towards the end. I think it's clear at that point that God's presentation ranges extremely, and it can be animalistic or human. So it's interesting that that's sort of a choice that she's made. And then there's also the ocean, who has a gay relationship with Kissin's father. It's a hinge relationship. He's married to Kissin's mother and also romantically involved with the ocean at the same time.
There's also, hot take, something inherently queer about Percy Jackson.
No, I mean, you're right. Do you mean Percy or the series?
I mean both.
Yes.
Because Percy and Annabeth is a bisexual relationship.
Yeah.
It just is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say he's too well written to be straight, but he's too well written to be straight.
I've said that on the show before.
He's too in touch with his own masculinity and how he presents to not be a little bit queer.
And him and Jason definitely had a little mutual crush going on. Come on. It's simply true. I don't think he ever liked Nico.
No. Nico is like 10.
Yeah, when they meet, obviously when they get older, they're at a more comparative age and it would be fine if they dated. But I think when you meet someone and you mentally categorize them as younger than you, often they just stay younger than you in your brain.
And there is such a conflict there. I don't think Percy could ever see Nico as a fully rounded human.
Yeah.
Because Percy has this shadow of guilt that just sort of separates the two of them.
And also controversial maybe, but I think Percy never forgave Nico for the, in inverted commas, betrayal in The Last Olympian, which I still maintain wasn't even a betrayal because he thought that Hades was telling him the truth genuinely and was betrayed himself. And then he fixed it. And then Percy was like, what if we leave him to die in a jar? That's not the foundation for a healthy relationship.
No, absolutely not. It's the whole thing of Hades' kids are supposed to have the fatal flaw of holding a grudge. And then you look at Percy out here who's never forgiven anybody in his life for anything.
Including himself. At least he's consistent, but good God.
I love that man.
Honestly. But speaking of Percy, we talked about the water as a community space where people can be queer together. But I think there is also that element of privacy that comes with the water. Again, it's kind of that liminal space thing. It is an escape to some degree, which obviously being queer and self-isolating often go hand in hand. I'm particularly thinking of the water at night feels very queer
Oh, yeah.
Just inherently.
And there is multiple instances in Percy Jackson of, because he's a son of Poseidon, he's very isolated and he only has the water for company for like the first half of the book. And then when the kiss happens in book 5, it happens below the water so no one can see them.
Exactly. The big damn kiss, as I think the trope is called, often is like a spectacle, tying into the whole Love Simon / Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which got so much flack because the kiss was a spectacle and because everyone saw it. Whereas if you compare it with something like Heartstopper, where they go off in private even after they've had a large public moment, I think it's interesting that this is a straight, in inverted commas, kiss between Percy and Annabeth, but it still does happen in private, even though it's the big kiss. It could easily have happened in front of the whole camp with everybody cheering, you would think. And it kind of does, in that they all like dump them in the water, right? But also, the actual kiss itself is still a private thing, which is interesting.
Yeah. The other thing, in the Roots of Chaos series, aka The Pirate with the Orange Tree, there's this sort of dichotomy of fire and water.
Yeah.
The fire is treated as inherently bad and water is treated as inherently good. And also there's lots of gay people in the water. I'm reading the
Sorry, that's such a good phrase. I don't think we can skip over that. There's lots of gay people in the water.
There's lots of gay people in the water, Soren.
Can't move for them.
I'm reading the prequel, A Day of Fallen Night, right now. And there's these two enemies definitely on their way to being lovers. And they're having all these flirty scenes. And they're also riding on the back of a dragon, a water dragon specifically.
Yes.
And the queer vibes are immaculate. In the Watchful City.
An interesting one, I feel like that's more water as isolation again. Because when Anima is in the water, air are kind of cut off from everything. They have this freedom to move between bodies and stuff, which is very queer. But then are not experiencing things through their own lens. And when they connect with the vessel, that feels queer in terms of finding community and finding commonality. Maybe being a little bit attracted to each other. I don't think we talked about that in the episode, but, is that a stretch? Probably not.
No. Connection, community, again.
Oh, that line from Lakelaw about adhering to each other like water molecules.
Another one, Tits on the Moon by Dessa.
Yes.
That poem literally lives in my brain rent-free since the moment I heard it. Watery, weirdly queer vibes. I don't know, vaguely queer vibes. It feels queer.
I think with Dessa, because she's had people question her gender before, this is a thing that I've just seen in like her comments and things. She's also in a very male-dominated space as a female rapper, and as a feminist, she's thought about her gender. Is that thing that I've heard people joking about being like cis people who have actually considered their gender and they are cis on purpose. Obviously, I can't put words in her mouth. I don't know if she's thought about that, but the way that she engages with femininity in her lyrics and in her poetry gives me that vibe of like, this is something that I have chosen for myself.
Yeah. She's very conscious of her physical body and of her like existence and of perception.
Given that you've mentioned poetry now, just extending this, Richard Sykin's poetry.
Yes.
He goes back to drowning a lot. Yeah, if we're into poetry, we will be here for a whole life. That's fine.
That's okay.
That's okay.
It's allowed.
Do we have anything else we want to say about queer water?
Everything's queer if you try hard enough.
That's true.
That's what I have to say.
We don't have the sign off for this either. Do we just tell people that they're always welcome through the bookcase?
Always welcome to rearrange the bookcase to get to the cat on top. Open the skylight and come into the bookcase.
Rappel through the ceiling.